Beautiful beings, this is a really important video about why you're feeling triggered and how to use the law of subtraction with your voice to lighten yourself up. We're on the awakening journey here together. You and I are remembering our greatness, remembering who we really are. And that's the awakening process as we subtract the denser energy. Your triggers are a powerful reminder of what's still there, keeping you from remembering. So think of it kind of like Swiss cheese, right? The cheese has holes in it, right? But there's still a lot of cheese there, right? We want to create more holes in the cheese, in that matrix, so we can really see past it. And that's what law of subtraction is. That's what law of subtraction is. We get to subtract the cheese. We get to make more holes in that Swiss cheese until it's gone. And we are lighter and clearer and vibrating higher. So, what are triggers? Triggers, when they come up, when you're feeling them, when you feel that surge of energy, right? When you feel that surge that you want to react, or you want to implode, or you want to run, fight or flight or freeze, that's a trigger. That is unprocessed energy from some kind of experience, past parallel universe. It's a past or parallel experience of energy that hasn't been processed yet. That's what it is. And the more we become conscious of it, the more we get to process it, lighten it up, and subtract. Now, in the Course in Miracles, they would call this the miracle moment. That moment that you have an awareness that you're feeling, one, the trigger, that you're onto it, that it's not unconscious anymore. The miracle moment is when this gap gets smaller and smaller and you start to have this aha moment in the moment of the trigger, and you get to work with it and not even react anymore. That's the miracle moment in the Course in Miracles. So what do we do? What do we do? How do we close this gap? The first step is notice you're having a trigger. For me, parenting brought up huge triggers that I didn't even know were still there from my childhood. And I was such in the wanting to parent consciously that I had blinders on to the triggers that were actually coming up. So even though I was doing a lot of awakening work, I was doing law of attraction, I was studying different consciousness methods, I still was a little blinded to the triggers that parenting was bringing up for me. So now, a little bit later, my kids are older now, 15 and 18, I get to start looking at those triggers a little bit more deeply. And this has been invaluable. And here I am really noticing it and starting to shallow the gap. And one of the tools that I use is my voice. And I'm really excited to teach you how to use your own voice to process these triggers and why your voice is so powerful to do this for you, to process these triggers. So the first step is noticing that the trigger is happening. Okay, and just notice, I'm triggered, right? The second is to start being able to pause. You want to be able to pause when you feel a trigger. So you can't pause when you're having a trigger if you don't know that you're having a trigger. So the first thing is, even if it's in retrospect, you're laying in bed and you're like, wow, that was, I was triggered, right? That's okay. Yes, even if it's in retrospect, that's noticing, that's the first step. And then you try to notice it in the moment, and that's the pause moment, so that you can prevent the reactivity. And when that happens, that's exciting. So because then you can pause and you can use this tip I want to tell you about. So in that pause, you want to go take a safe seat away from the person or situation, just if you can for like 30 seconds, pause. And what you want to do is feel the charge of that trigger. It's energy, okay? It's there to say, I'm here, I want attention and processing. The thing is, what I've noticed is that if we give that trigger charge a story, If we give it too much definition, we actually solidify it back in there and it doesn't really get processed. If we can sit with it, just sit with the present sensation, that helps us not define it and just let it smolder and be, okay? Now, I really like to take it a step further, and I like to feel that energy, that smoldering energy, and I like to just give it my voice. So then I just let out a tone. Now, this isn't about sounding pretty. It doesn't have to be a pure tone. It doesn't have to be anything. It can be a groan, it's just an ah. But your voice is a very powerful activator, one, of the parasympathetic nervous system that calms you down when you're in the trigger. But it also brings prana through the breath, past the vocal cords, and into this larynx region where there's an activating center for the vagus nerve and also for emotions. So as you start calming yourself down by activating the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system, you are also helping to process your emotions because those triggers for those neurons are there too for the emotional center. So you are processing your emotions, you're processing the energy of the trigger while you're calming your nervous system down. And it is a really powerful way of processing energy from the trigger without getting back into the story. Okay, it's giving the trigger and the sensation and the story attention without giving it the control of your life. And so this is the way we're using law of subtraction to take and process that energy with your voice and move that energy through, get it moving and lightening. And then you'll notice within 30 seconds, a minute, that you are back to your authentic present space of living. And so this is a super powerful awakening tool to deal with the triggers. And I want you to know that even the most awakened person can get triggered. A series of triggers come when we are ready to see them and witness them. And they'll come when we're ready to see them, and they'll come when we're taking action on them, right? So it's there's no judgment here. If you're triggered, if you're finding yourself triggered and you're in a season of healing, just find the tool to use that works best. And I'm hoping that this tool with your voice can help you. Now, the thing about the voice is that it's vulnerable to use your own voice. I get it. I really get it. And if you'd like support with that, I do awakened voice sessions. Because if you could get out of your own way and using your voice, it is an amazing awakening tool. It's an amazing healing tool. But sometimes in this culture, we're told we're not enough, we're too loud, we're too much, we're too little, we're too soft, um, we're not deserving. There's fear of rejection, there's fear of judgment, all around using our voice. And all that prevents us from using this powerful tool of processing our triggers and our and these energies, these dense energies, with our own voice. So if you could use support around that, go in the descriptions. You can totally get a free discovery call with me to see if an awakened voice session would benefit you. It's a free discovery session, so it can't hurt. So, beautiful beings, is this clear? Does this make sense? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if it's working for you. It's a really potent tool that's been working in my life, and I hope it can and work for you to process these triggers, this discomfort of this intense energy that comes up, that produces sometimes this unconscious energy when we're the most loving, peaceful people most of the time, right? These triggers come up and we're like, what's happening? So you can totally use your voice to process this. And it's this law of subtraction that's really going to help get this dense energy out of your field to create more spaces in the cheese, right? So we see through that and we come through and we really see ourselves. Now, if you want to take this a bit further and you want to trigger a trigger, look in the mirror and say to yourself out loud, I love you. no matter what. And say that 10 times. And notice if hearing your own voice, say this message to yourself, triggers anything to come up. Sometimes it's helpful to trigger a trigger if you really want to get the awakening process moving, right? And you don't want to have to do triggers out here with relationships mirroring back, which can be so intense at times. You can trigger yourself into a trigger and then work with it with your sound. So I love you no matter what in the mirror. And a lot of times that brings some stuff up for people, brings some sensation, it brings feeling up. Go to those feelings, feel that trigger, let out a sound. Really, it can be a groan, it can just be a ah, just let the sound and the prana go through this larynx area. All right, you'll notice that your nervous system shifts, the emotions get processed, the body feels a little lighter, and then you've just done the law of subtraction and you've just raised your vibration. Make sense? Let me know in the comments. Put a thumbs up if this is making sense. So beautiful beings, that's all I really have to say today. So I hope this was helpful to someone, and I'll see you another time on one of the videos on my channel. Namaste.